Okay, Ms. Williams, thank you very much for your input. Please describe the important cultural events, celebrations, and practices in your culture.
The one of the most popular events that Trinidad and Tobago is known for is Carnival, and
Mr. Wong, come to Mr. Hernandez's office, Mr. Wong, Mr. Hernandez's office.
is Trinidad and Tobago's Carnival, and just like in New Orleans, how they have Carnival, we have Carnival as well, and it's the same thing. The week before Lent, we start celebrating for the whole week, nonstop. We dress up in costumes. New music is released. They have what's called the Battle of the Bands, and a band is not necessarily a musical group, but it's a group of people that get together and they make their costumes, and so it's very colorful. And then you have like people on stilts, and so basically it's most colorful, most outrageous, most creative band will be the winner. That has the best music, and they have what's called Monarch, and the Monarch is the person whose song is the best song from Carnival that year. So that's a big, very prestigious to be the Calypso Monarch. And they have various categories. Of one, when Calypso first started, it's very political, and so they have that, and some of them are poke fun at the different politicians, whereas and some of them are just mainly for fun and to dance to. So I would say, as far as celebrations, that would be one of the biggest celebrations we have. Right before Lenten, we have a carnival. People from all the islands come. People from actually around the world come and celebrate Carnival in Trinidad and Tobago.
Oh, that sounds really fun. Probably it's something very similar to Brazil then.
Yes.
They got something that's very colorful. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. What are some of the reading materials or films or videos that can help us learn about your culture?
One book that I read is by V.S. Nepal, and he's a Nobel laureate winner from Trinidad and Tobago, and it's called the book is called The Loss of El Dorado, and it outlines the history of Trinidad and Tobago and how the different empires, I would say, that came and owned Trinidad and Tobago. It started off, it's been French, it's been Dutch, it's been Spanish, and the one that took hold, the last one that had it was English. So Trinidad and Tobago speaks English, but years ago they would find people there that spoke French, because prior to that was a French colony, and Dutch. Tobago, Trinidad and Tobago are two separate islands, Tobago being the smaller of the two. So the Dutch had Tobago, so like there are different forts there, that kind of thing. So that would be one book, and it outlines that history. Another clip, Parts Unknown, with Anthony Bourdain. He did a special on the food and the culture of Trinidad and Tobago, and it's very accurate, the way he described, and you get to see just how we live a little bit, and the food and the culture. And then to go along with the food, even though my mom is a really good cook, she still uses cookbooks, and she has her high school cookbook, and it's called the Naparima Girls High School Cookbook, and you can still find it online, I believe. And then there's another cookbook she uses called the Multicultural Cuisine of Trinidad and Tobago, and so it goes through and it outlines the various foods. And one thing about Trinidad and Tobago, just like the various people came to colonize it, you'll find that in the foods as well. So and then once anywhere that had slavery, once slavery ended and they had to find people to work, they had what's called coolie laborers that came. And when they came, which is people from India basically, they brought their culture, and the cultures mixed. So in a lot of the foods, we have lots of Indian food, there's lots of Chinese food, along with the African types of food as well.
So basically, it's like a blending of different flavors and cultures.
And that's what it is. That's what Trinidad is. Lots of blending of different cultures. When you go there, you'll see people, and you wouldn't. as humans, we tend to want to categorize people, and you wouldn't be sure, like, are they Hispanic, or, you know, where are they from? So that's one thing that makes Trinidad nice, because there you have people from very dark-skinned people, very light-skinned people, people who are white Trinidadians, Chinese. They have one of the largest Muslim populations as well. So it's very diverse culture, and the food is representative of that. Even V.S. Nepal, he's actually Indian descent.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
That's very interesting. Now, how do you think others outside of your culture view your culture?
Guess with everything I've said, they like to partake in carnival, so I think they would see us as fun, very diverse, lots of beautiful people. We're also known to be, what's the word I'm looking for? Some people view Trinidadians, because we're one of the larger islands, we have a very large gas and oil, and so there's lots of work there. So we one of the richer islands as well, and so they tend to call us arrogant because we're, you know, they feel we're from a bigger island and that kind of thing. So that can be part of it. You know, we have certain bravado that we're known for, as well as I was telling you earlier, my mom has this little sing-song accent, so that's also there. People enjoy to hear people from Trinidad and Tobago talk just because of the way they speak. But most of all, I think fun. I think they view as culture as very fun and very free-spirited. Yeah.
Okay, that's really interesting. Now, this one, for example, what are one of the fondest memories that you have from your childhood?
Now, even though my parents are from Trinidad and Tobago, I was born in St. Croix, and I spent most of my time growing up here. But I like to say my mom and my dad took the island and just kind of transplanted it. But I remember being a kid, and we lived maybe at most a half a mile from the library. So my dad wouldn't drive us. We would get together and we would walk to the library, and we'd get all the books, and he would put us on his shoulders, and we would walk across the bridge, because there's like a little bridge that went over some water before we got to the library. And I just remember doing that in the summers, and I don't know, that's the one thing that sticks out in my head. Us going to the library, getting the books, reading the books with my father, and just enjoying the time walking to the library, in the library, and from the library.
So basically like a family time.
Yeah, the family, yeah.
Well, that was really interesting. That would be nice to have it, right? Well, this one right here. Have you ever experienced prejudice or discrimination? And if you please, elaborate on that.
Wouldn't say, I guess it's a different type of prejudice of, so you have, especially being a kid, and as a speech pathologist, speech is developed in your house, not necessarily in the greater community. So if your parents have an accent, you as a child, you speak as your parents would, so your speech is a little bit accented. So I remember playing with kids, and they're asking me, "Are you a Trinidad?" I was like, "Well, that's an interesting question." Am I a Trinidad?
Yeah. Trinidad, what is that?
What is
That's
he mean
not
by
my
that?
name. My name is not like that.
So I was confused by that, and then, when you're in elementary school, you don't really think much of it, and then you progress through school, and your speech isn't as accented. You kind of assimilate more to the greater culture around you. And then I had, being both African American and Afro Caribbean, I would have kids ask me, "Why do you talk white?" And I was like, "Well, that's an interesting question." Like, okay, well, what do they mean by that? You just kind of ponder it and go through that aspect of things, and then when you go to Trinidad to visit your relatives there, you realize, well, yeah, I don't really fit here either. And then I remember going in the airport, and I was an adult at that time, and some of the locals just decided to go in front of us when we were in line at the airport. And then my uncle, who's a businessman there, when they found out that's my uncle, all of a sudden we got our place back. Which was like, well, that's interesting. When I was a tourist, I didn't, I deserved to be cut. But once you found out that, my uncle is,
a very prominent person from the area.
then, well, maybe, okay, I deserve my place in line. So things like that, I've experienced here, like here and there, because one thing being a first generation American per se, you're neither from where your parents are from, and you're neither American. It's a nice little mixture of the two that you learn to work with, and it's a blessing in many aspects. Because my nephew, who has never been to Trinidad and doesn't have like the memories I have, he doesn't understand that, and so I guess I get that part, and so I do enjoy being from another place and being also American. So
Okay, that's a very good point that you mentioned right there. How do you perceive counseling and counselors?
So in my adult life, I have received counseling, and I find it's basically going through and sharing your thoughts, and getting to the root of whatever's going on with you at that time, and whatever you need to share with that person. The counselor kind of facilitates an environment to get you to a place where you can find strategies to deal with whatever emotion or situation that's present in your life. So I kind of look at it as two people kind of brainstorming so you can problem solve, more or less, and so that you can find solutions to whatever discontent or discomfort you're experiencing at that time.
Okay, very good. When it comes to counseling, what approach or interventions do you think will help you or someone from your cultural group the most?
That one, so in general, I think mental health issues are not what people, African American community and the Afro Caribbean community, they're not necessarily open to it as much as someone having a mental health issue or knowing how to communicate that you're suffering from depression, or I had a brother who was schizophrenic, and so initially we sought help from my mother, went to the church and spoke to the pastor at the church, and people came and prayed, whereas maybe counseling and medication at a certain point, that intervention may have been needed more so than having a pastor coming out and pray for that person's healing. So just being open to mental health services, and just having some just general education on the things that are available and what situations you may want to seek out further counseling and guidance.
Okay. The last one, if there's anything else would you like to add to help me understand your culture better?
I think we mentioned it earlier, very free-spirited people. There's also a lot of, banter back and forth, and it's not necessarily, it may sound aggressive on the outside, but it's not necessarily aggressive. It's just how they relate, and it's more of in a joking spirit than in an aggressive light. So if you see two kids, I think even in the African American community, going back and forth, and it may not be that they're actually upset with one another, that it's just how they develop a certain relationship, that back and forth banter of who had the best joke on this person or that person. So it's hard to draw a line, a distinction, like, okay, are they bullying one another versus is that normal cultural?
Their way to understand one another, or the way they can deal with some issues and try to understand each other.
Yeah, so and I find that working with kids, I'm like, okay, is this normal banter back and forth? They're just learning each other, feeling each other out, and they have that relationship where they can do that, or is this a problem? Is it bullying? So it is hard to distinguish the two sometimes.
So you will say probably for a counselor who is as knowledgeable of the culture, the particular culture, you might have to investigate or probably find out the reasons why they are being venture one another,
Right.
and a step up for us to start thinking that, oh, that they're fighting or maybe something like that. So get a little more informed, I guess.
Yeah, some background information to see how these two kids relate, and if that's just their normal banter back and forth versus this person is picking on me and there's a tension between the two.
So you would say the majority of the people will tend to do that, even in the female version?
There's
Or it's only
I would say my
a boy-
parents' generation, the women, there is a lot of banter back and forth.
oh,
And it's more of seeing like your wit. So it's a testing of each other's wit and seeing who can make that laughter, and you just at the end you just succeed. You're like, okay, I give it and you win. Like, yeah, that was funny. And you can't help it. Being a second generation, we don't do it as much. But I can see remnants of it. Like I have me and my friend and I will talk on the phone, and we find ourselves going back and forth a little bit, not arguing, but just say we're having a discussion and I need to prove a point. Then okay, this is what I'm going to say to prove my point, and this is how I'm going to say it to prove my point. But it's not digging at her, and I'm not being mean to her. I'm just emphasizing the point and trying to show my wit at the same time.
so it's something that you kind of actually acquire from the culture without being something that you normally do.
Right. Yeah, you kind of, yes. Like I understand it and I look back and I say, well, that's a little aggressive. But to them, it's not necessarily
It is
aggressive.
part of the culture.
Yes, it's just, that's how they think. You want to see who's the wittiest one. Basically, it's a battle of the wits, even though it's a discussion. In that discussion, they say things in colorful manners.
Okay.
And whoever can say things, it's not necessarily even derogatory. It's just that spin that they put on it.
Whoever has more colorful.
Yeah, whoever is who can be witty with it. Like, well, that didn't, like my aunt. She's perfect. My aunt can insult you, and you don't know she's insulting you. And that's how smooth she is. She's just very. She's like, oh, and she's very diplomatic, and she'll sit down and she'll talk, and she'll just, yes, this is this, this is this, and this is this, but, and you're like, wait.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Like, it sounds good, but what did she really mean by that?
Right.
So, it's almost a talent she has, and I find that with a lot of West Indian people, that is part of the case.
That is very interesting about the culture that you just commented, and I want to just take the opportunity to thank you for the interview. I have been very blessed to find out a lot of things about your culture, and thank you for your time, for the insight and everything else. And well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Wong.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye bye.